pride flag raised at Israeli Foreign Ministry, sparking religious rage. Rivka having a party in the bottom in Israel. On June 21st, Foreign Minister Yair Lapid ordered the pride flag to be displayed outside the Foreign Ministry office in Jerusalem in honor of Pride Month. But not everyone was thrilled. Deputy Foreign Minister Idan Roll, who is openly gay, welcomed the decision. Roll stated that waving the pride flag alongside the flag of Israel at the foreign ministry is an important message both within and outside Israel. MK Itamar Ben-Gvir, of the opposition's far-right Religious Zionism party, described the decision as a cheap provocation. According to Ben-Givr, displaying the flag does not serve the community but harms them and turns them into a political tool.
Okay, this is beautiful. I know there are going to be some accusations of pinkwashing, but I want to see what Rivka thinks before we get
well,
into that.
First of all, I think it's a solid win for Israel. Absolutely.
Yes. Solid W.
Yeah, I think that it's significant within Israel itself because, you know, sure, the pride flag in Tel Aviv, but Jerusalem's different, and it's kind of a conservative city. I mean, the Jews are conservative, the Christians are conservative, the Muslims are conservative. So to have it happen in that city and to have it with the Israeli flag is saying, like, look, it's, you know, we support equality for all sexual preferences in this country. You have protection under the law, can adopt kids, you know, all kinds of things. And this is part of what this government is about in terms of its support for equality. So if you don't like it, fine. You don't have to like it, but harming them, you know, I think that that's where you see that he's really just butthurt that his group is so strangled by religion that he didn't think to do it himself and get the political win. Because the fact that he says that, because he didn't say he's using them as a political tool. He said, no, it harms them and he's using them. So somehow the fact that being gay or being bisexual or LGBT is some sort of harm, and they're strangled by their religion and keeping it, you know, being against it, and also being against Lapid because he's not their guy. So anything he does it as Lapid, so it must be wrong. Because I would imagine if Bibi did it, they'd be like, yes, look at the way how they might still be thinking it's wrong and we think it's bad, some ultra-religious, but some people would be more like, yeah, you know, in some way, I think. Maybe it's maybe no. Our Israeli watchers, I'd like to hear their opinion.
I would also like to highlight the fact that if this coalition manages to stay together, this is Israel's future prime minister who made this decision. So it's interesting.
If the coalition stands.
That's what I said.
You know,
so for people who don't know, okay, it's my turn. For people who don't know, Lapid is like right now the coalition that is the government in Israel is like a multi-party coalition of 12 parties, if I remember correctly. But the two top ones are Yemeni party and the Lapid. Who's Lapid? Yeah, it's Lapid, right? Lapid's party and the Bennett guy and this Lapid one. And this party is a center left, I would say, right? Rivka, center left. I think Lapid is center left.
It's definitely centrist.
Centrist, right? But again, the most powerful party.
Bennett is more right-ish.
Yeah, that's what I said. So we have Bennett's party, which is the Yemeni party, is far right. It's more right leaning than Likud, if you can believe that. So the most important parties right now in Israel, as we speak, which changes very fast. So I don't know, like next week, maybe the most powerful parties are going to switch completely based on the way politics in Israel works. But right now, the most three powerful parties, number one is Likud. Even though Likud is not in the government, they're still the most powerful party because they have like 30 seats out of the 120 seat in Knesset. But the other powerful party with only 6 or 7 seats is the Yemeni party. Even though they have only 6 or 7 seats, the fact that their prime minister is now from that party makes them one of the most important parties right now. And then the third most important party right now is the Lapid party, because it's the biggest party in the current government of Israel, right? So this is part of the coalition government, and apparently they're in charge of the foreign ministry, right? And I mean, I don't know if Netanyahu is not going to go anti-LGBT and call this out. Like, that would be too far. That would be like something that, yeah. So I think Netanyahu would love to be able to come and say like, see, this is what you get without me. You get like left-leaning people like ruling your government. But I don't think he might. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think he's going to come and say anything against the pride flag. I don't think that Netanyahu's international image in Western countries is very important for him. So even though he wanted to portray himself as right-leaning, he wouldn't go as far as like calling something like this out, right? But I really like the current coalition. You know, even though the Yemeni party is now the Bennett, which comes from the far-right party in Israel, is now the prime minister. It is a coalition that is has been very against the ultra-Orthodox parties, right? So just far right doesn't mean pro-ultra-Orthodox, right? The ultra-Orthodox right now, group of people in Israel have lost significantly in the building of this coalition, and they have lost a lot of influence, which is beautiful. But they might come back. And Netanyahu might use them as a way to make his opposition against this coalition stronger, and they come back. But I like, while they're like out of power, I really like the fact that this coalition is normalizing things that the ultra-Orthodox groups hate, because setting up new norms, like, it's one thing for Israel to have pride parades and the gay flag everywhere and this being allowed, but putting up in the foreign ministry as a way to demonstrate, to signal to the world that this is what we stand for, is setting up a new norm that is going to be harder for ultra-Orthodox to fight back against normalization. Once you set a new precedent, once you plant this flag in a place where it wasn't before, removing it would be something that requires more political capital, right? So undoing this by the ultra-Orthodox, undoing this normalization would be very difficult. So I don't know. This coalition is a very fragile coalition, but while it's in power, normalizing certain things like this, I like that. Okay. Also normalizing and giving Arabs a voice in their government, that's also something that I enjoy seeing, that it's become normalized. Even though they're an Islamist group, I know they're Muslim Brotherhood, I do still think like normalizing Arabs having a seat at the table is a very good thing. And also, I understand that a lot of people could consider this pinkwashing, and Lapid, even though they're not a far-right government, they are, when it comes to Likud, Lapid, or when it comes to Bennett or Lapid or Netanyahu, all of them, when it comes to the foreign policy, when it comes to the Palestinians and Iran or anything, they don't disagree on almost anything, right? So if you have any issues with Israel's policies when it comes to settlements in the West Bank, which I am against, or some other policies that we are against, there is no disagreements between any of these parties, so you could criticize that, and I want to make sure that we will continue to criticize, like, settlements in the West Bank, for example. Like, this is not going to distract us away from criticizing even Lapid, which is like a center left government. The fact that they're for West settlements, like, this is not going to distract us away from criticizing them from this position. Like, I understand that governments sometimes might be using, I don't know, greenwashing or pinkwashing. Pinkwashing, for people who don't know, is a method that some people say that, oh, you have like peer poor human rights record, and you stand for LGBT rights to look more progressive. Like progressive fall for this, and they say like, oh my God, this is a progressive government, and they ignore the fact that, like, I don't know, a government might be doing human rights violations or doing something that is criminal based on international law or stuff like that, right? Like, no, we're going to be able to completely separate this and judge that independently. Even if this is a government, if this is a party that you don't support and you don't like, I think you could celebrate the effect that this might have on normalizing gay rights, completely separate from, and not let that get in the way of you objectively analyzing Lapid, without letting this distract you from whether or not what they're doing elsewhere is right or wrong. Rivka, you want to say something?
Actually, there are some differences, though, I think, that are kind of significant in terms of how all of them feel about the situation or have publicly expressed, let's put it that way, which sometimes in Israel can just saying that you're for something or against something else can cause this massive outrage and engender all these other, assumptions. So, like, I remember Naftali Bennett said something once about, I don't know if I could go against my conscience to dismantle some specific settlements. Correct. Israelis correct me if I'm wrong about that, but he made some, comment about, the settlements, his conscience wouldn't allow him or something like that. And then in 2005 or 7, they dismantled a bunch of settlements and moved them out when they left Gaza. And, so that happened under, different government that wasn't necessarily either one of these guys. And then I know that Lapid had said some things about being a two-state solution guy and no new settlements, but the ones maybe that are there. So there are some differences in how they're approaching these issues. And I've just noticed that sometimes in Israeli politics, it's very similar in some ways, not all, to Americans, where just like you have to have a slogan or a narrative and that's it. And this is, it's got to be this or that. And if you don't agree on A, then everything else must be wrong with what you're saying. So I just wanted to point that out. And yes,
right, by
all means, it should criticize things that, are maybe there to be criticized, but I don't know if it'll last, but I'm hopeful. I mean, I don't want to be negative because it's unique in the entire region. So, let's go. More power to them. See if all of these people can work together to come to something that's a shared goals.
Suze, you want to say something? Oh, because I have said okay. So yeah, actually, thank you so much. Wait. Okay. So yeah, thank you, Rivka, for that. There are some differences, but I should have been more clear. Based on even if I have different views and stuff, it seems like there's not going to be any changes in the settlement policy under any of these compared to when Likud was in power. So maybe that's yeah, okay, that would be a more accurate way.
Well, who knows?
Yes, okay. All right. Yeah, this is everything. It's Israel. Anything could change within a week. So just to provide some context for people, because the reason why I was saying Lapid is because the party that Lapid rules over is Yesh Atid. Okay, this is the one that I have the biggest problem with because his name rhymes with the name of his party, and that's why it's confusing to me. Okay, so Lapid is in charge of the Yesh Atid party, which has how many seats? 20 seats, I think. 19 seats.
I'm not sure.
Yep. Yeah, I have it. Don't worry. 19 seats. And Bennett. So, and then again, the Yesh Atid party is center left, I think. Bennett, which is the far right party, which is now the Bennett is in charge of the far right party, which is a Yemeni party, and that's I think has either 6 or 7 seats. And the Yemeni party is now, and Bennett is now the prime minister, right? The 3 main parties in this coalition that is right now ruling over Israel has also an Arab party for the first time in Israel's history, which is Arab parties have been part of the Knesset, which is the parliament throughout Israel's history, but they've never been part of the coalition that forms the government. This is extremely historic because now for the first time we have an Arab party that is part of the coalition that forms the government. And I forgot the name of the party, but the name of the leader of that party is also very confusing for people because his name is Mansour Abbas. And the reason why it confuses some people is because the head of the Palestinian party, which is Fatah, his name is Mahmoud Abbas, okay? So people like Mansour Abbas is the head of the Islamic party in Israel that is now part of the coalition. Mahmoud Abbas is the guy that is the head of the Fatah party in the West Bank, okay? So don't confuse Mahmoud Abbas with Mansour Abbas, okay? And yes, the party that Mansour Abbas is now as part of Israel's government is a party that is Muslim. This is not just an Islamic group; it's a Muslim Brotherhood Islamic group. Okay, so it would be accurate for you to say Muslim Brotherhood is partially ruling over Israel right now. Okay, that would be an accurate statement. However, don't panic because I do know that a lot of people use again Muslim Brotherhood as a way to like, ooh, Muslim Brotherhood. Okay, please do understand that yes, we could have an issue. We have issues with Muslim Brotherhood. But Muslim Brotherhood in Israel and in Gaza and in Tunisia and in Egypt, they're not all the same. Okay, this is a very base ideology that many different movements have come out of it. Some of it are a lot more radical than the other. Okay, so Muslim Brotherhood in Tunisia is very different from Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. Okay, and if you want to stick in the Israeli area, Muslim Brotherhood in Gaza, you know what's Muslim Brotherhood in Gaza? Is Hamas. Hamas is also based on Muslim Brotherhood. So Muslim Brotherhood in Gaza, which is Hamas, is very different from the Muslim Brotherhood of Mansour Abbas. Okay, so just if somebody just uses the phrase Muslim Brotherhood, don't think like they're all the same as each other, right? Because this is what people try to do to fearmonger, like, hey, this is Muslim Brotherhood. They have ties to Muslim Brotherhood. You know who else is Muslim Brotherhood? Hamas is Muslim Brotherhood. Oh my God, they must be as bad as Hamas. It doesn't work like that. All right. Anybody wanted to add anything?
I just wanted to say, Armin, Yesh Atid means there is a future, so you can remember it that way.
But now I have to remember two things. I have to remember
that party,
the name and the translation.
I mean, he says, you know, he claims he's the secular center, you know, the centrists.
Ooh, I like that. Yes. I like that. Yeah, I know. I know I'm being a little bit too pessimistic, but because it's a fragile government, and I'm like, I don't know how long it's going to last. So I'm glad that Rivka is here to provide a bit of a more optimistic take. So I appreciate that.
Hey guys, if you're a fan of Blasphemy and Sexy Callie, you know, like me, then you need to be sure to subscribe to our newsletter. Link in the description below. Because if you subscribe, we will send you a free copy of our Blasphemous Art ebook. And let me tell you, it is the tastiest blasphemy that you can find anywhere available today. And we are so generous with our blasphemy that we continue to send you more blasphemy every week. So make sure to subscribe. Link in the description below.